Good morning and welcome, and great to see so many of you joining us this morning. For those who don't know me, I am Camilla Sherwin, one of the sustainability consultants working within the iiE team. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to our 12th Investors in the Environment Awards. It's pertinent that today's event is taking place during COP27, as global leaders discuss what agreements can be made and collaborations forged to create a more resilient and considerate world at an intergovernmental level. We will hear about how iiE members are taking action at a local level to reduce resource use, cut carbon, protect the natural environment, and influence others in their networks and supply chains to do the same. To quickly run through the programme, I'll shortly introduce our two keynote speakers. Their presentations will be followed by a review of the iiE year, and we will then move on to announcing the winners of this year's awards. Today's event will give a small snapshot of some of the outstanding work being done by our network of Green Champions, who do so much to lead their employers and colleagues and to incorporate environmental and social considerations into their organisation's decision-making and culture. We know that achieving these aims is not always easy, and many have taken on the role through personal commitment rather than because it was ever part of their job description. On behalf of the iiE team, I'd like to thank our Green Champions, many of whom are here today, for all they do. They are essential agents of change, and we couldn't do much without them. I'd now like to introduce our speakers to set the scene for the awards. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of their presentations, so please type any that occur to you into the Q&A box and I will read them out. We will shortly hear from Henry Unwin, Director of Sustainability at Daylesford Organic. Henry has worked in sustainability for over a decade and has a deep-rooted passion for the environment, sparked by his childhood growing up on an organic farm in Cumbria. Over his career, he has worked for many different organisations in roles which range from being climate officer at Northamptonshire County Council to being head of sustainability at the restaurant group Nando's. At Daylesford Organic, he's responsible for keeping this pioneering company at the forefront of sustainable food and farming. We look forward to hearing about some of what he's up to after we have heard from the CEO of Forum for the Future, Dr Sally Uren OBE. Sally has led Forum for the Future's mission to accelerate the transformation to a just and regenerative future for almost a decade. During that time, she has worked with some of the world's biggest companies, as well as a wide range of other non-profit, membership and philanthropic organisations. Her role involves building strong business relationships, from one-to-one partnerships to multi-stakeholder collaborations, all designed to address the complex challenges involved in adapting business systems for the better. We're delighted that she has made it back from COP27 to speak to us, and with no further ado, I'll hand over to Sally to talk to us about the why, what, and how of just and regenerative business. Thank you, Sally.
You've just introduced Forum. I'm not going to dwell on this. We are a sustainability non-profit. We work across all sectors, and our mission is to accelerate transformation towards a just and regenerative future. And I'm a bit croaky today because, yes, I have been in Egypt, and I've come back with lots of ideas, but also with COVID. I've managed to dodge COVID for the last 2 years, really very successfully. Yeah, it seems that 35,000 people in Egypt was a recipe for spreading the virus. But anyway, I'm fine. I just sound croakier than normal. Next slide, please, Camilla. So I wanted to cover today the why, the what, and how just and regenerative. And just picking up the why, if we move to the next slide, please, it just covers some of the statistics that we are really familiar with, and certainly we're very clear about the climate change challenge. And certainly the way I view this is there are 3 key issues we have to begin to tackle in a really systemic way right now. climate, biodiversity, and inequality. And these are all linked. And I honestly believe we are at a crossroads. We have the choice now to really address these issues in a deep and systemic way and to really reconfigure the systems around us. Or we carry on along the path that we're on, which is not a path, I don't believe, that will help deliver the change that we know is needed. So next slide, please, Camilla. And as we look at this crossroads, it's really useful to think about the evolution of corporate sustainability and the evolution of the work that we've all been doing for a while. And there has been a pretty swift evolution. What I wanted to cover today is where we might go next. So we started with 1.0, 15 years, maybe more, 20 years ago, minimizing negative emissions, then shifting to 2.0, 10, 12 years ago, carbon neutrality, water neutrality, and then net positive. That was a concept that I was really heavily involved with, along with partners at WWF and at the Climate Group, setting out principles for what it might mean for business to put more back into society and the environment than they took out. And I did really think this was very ambitious. But the next slide has got a sort of, yes, it's ambitious, but perhaps no, not ambitious enough. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And the no, not enough really speaks to the fact that the principle of net positive was to put more back in to nature, more back into society than we take out. But if we don't change the underlying systems, the way in which those physical systems, socioeconomic systems work, then if we just continue to think about bailing out nature, unless we change how those systems work, then nature will always need a bailout. And so that's why at Forum, we've pushed our understanding of net positive further to this notion of just and regenerative. And that's the next slide, which is really talking to this notion of sustainability 4.0. So yes, putting more back into environment and society than we take out, because assets of natural capital are low, social structures are not as strong as we need them to be, but actually reconfiguring these systems. And just a word on systems, a system can be a physical system, a socio-economic system, such as energy, or the food system, can be a social system, such as education, can be an organization. The world around us is an interconnected set of systems. And these systems at the moment aren't broken, even though we hear the food system is broken, the energy system is broken. Our systems around us at the moment currently work to the goals of those systems. So if we take the food system, by and large, and Henry's work is a complete example of where we need to head to, and it's not aligned with the goals of the current system in that way. But a lot of the food system is working to goals of cheap food to market, produced in ways that doesn't take account of biodiversity, that doesn't deliver a sustainable livelihood to the grower. And certainly when we think about the global economic system, the goals there are often short-term profit maximization, value creation for a very small part of our society. So in other words, what we have to think about doing as part of Sustainability 4.0 is reconfiguring the goals of the system. And that's what that second path, that second possibility at that crossroads is all about, is asking, what does it mean to reconfigure our system so our systems start to work to different goals of the system? If we can move to the next slide, please. So this is what we call a just and regenerative future, a future where we have reconfigured our systems and where we've adopted an approach that recognizes planetary boundaries, recognizes that each year we reach Earth Overshoot Day in summer, which is the day at which the point in the year where we've used more resources than are available on an annual basis. A just and regenerative approach creates and distributes value in new ways, understands that as humans, we're a fundamental part of nature, and COVID was useful in that regard because it really shone a light on the fact we can't have a healthy economy without healthy people, and we can't have healthy people without a healthy planet. And just and regenerative is also respecting everyone's right and potential to thrive, and is, as I've explained, underpinned by systems change. Next slide, please. So that's the why, just and regenerative. We need to reconfigure systems if we're going to address the root causes of our big challenges of climate, biodiversity, structural inequality. But what is it? Next slide, please. We have created something called the Business Transformation Compass. It's available to download on our website, and it's a contribution to helping create a guiding light and North Star about what we mean by just and regenerative, but also a navigation guide to get there. And we pulled it together in partnership with WBCSD, but with the support of all the organizations you can see in front of you. Next slide, please. And what we do in the Business Transformation Compass is really take a long, hard look at this issue of mindset, which might seem strange, but if you look at all the practice around systems change, and particularly the work of Donella Meadows, one of the early pioneers in systems change, she talks about the different levers you can pull to shift systems. And one of the deepest levers for change is our mindset, is the stories we tell ourselves, is the narratives we tell ourselves, our beliefs. And what we did in the Business Transformation Compass, and we do in all of our work, is really help understand, well, where is the current mindset in an organization? And what might we need to do differently to shift our mindset into just and regenerative? These mindsets are all nested. Any one organization can move through them in any one day. And we really tend to start with that risk mitigation mindset. We have to be less harmful, moving to zero harm. And you can see these mindsets really align to these different maturity levels of sustainability, moving to a do good mindset, and that just and regenerative mindset where we're building the capacity for justice and regeneration. And we're really actively thinking about reshaping the world around us. The next slide just gives you an example of what you might hear in organizations that are really displaying these different mindsets. So at that risk mitigation mindset, then we absolutely need to know the business case for sustainability. We need to be clear about what are the value drivers for tackling sustainability. But it's not enough, and we need to go beyond that. But certainly within risk mitigation mindset, we're understanding the business case. We know that we need to convince our executive team, and this is just something that you might hear in that mindset. We then swivel to the zero harm mindset, where we might be understanding that we need better data and metrics. And this is where we start to see a difference in mindset. So for zero harm, yes, we'll be setting net zero targets, but we might be setting a time frame for delivery of those targets for 2050. But what begins to happen when you move through the mindsets, and if we just drop down to just and regenerative, as I said a moment ago, is that mindset where we understand the urgency of operating within planetary boundaries. So as we're setting our net zero targets, we'll actually be setting net zero for scope 1 and scope 2 by 2030, not 2050. 2050 is just too late. And for our scope 3 carbon emissions, those really complex emissions through supply chains, then a target date of 2040 at the latest. So even if you're at the beginning of your sustainability journey, just shifting to that just and regenerative mindset, it changes how you do things. Another shift is we tend to say, and I hear this a lot, what our communities really need is ... That's in that do good mindset area there. Or what our employees need is ... But with a just and regenerative mindset, we then say, well, how can we co-design our approaches, co-design solutions with our supply chain, with our communities, with our employees, rather than assume that we know the answers, because actually approaches tend to be really context specific. And the final feature of that just and regenerative mindset that I just want to shine a light on today is we understand as an organization, our success depends on the health and vitality of the systems in which we operate. It's impossible to have a sustainable business in an unsustainable system because of the connections around us. So that's just a word on mindset and why just shifting our mindset can change how we do things. We move to the next slide, please. So how then do we shift mindsets, and what happens when we shift our mindset and we apply to how we do things. Next slide just talks about what we've done in the compass. So we've approached this shift. So what happens when you shift mindset according to key sustainability challenges, climate, nature, etc., and key business functions. And I'm just going to give you 3 examples today of what happens when you take really important issues and apply that just and regenerative mindset. So next slide, please. Oh, there's a lot of clicking to be done here. So there's quite a few bullets that will start to appear. If we can just get them all up, I think it's going to be easier. So let's take operations, business operations. And when we're talking about a just and regenerative mindset, we're talking about 5 attributes here, focusing on how we do things, thinking about potential, not problems, really caring for the health of our operating context, valuing history and lived experience. We don't do this enough. And being genuine about taking an authentically participatory approach. But when we take that just and regenerative mindset, then we start to build capacity of employees rather than assume that they know everything they need to know already. We start to showcase how higher environmental, social and environmental standards can work successfully. And we start to advocate for widespread adoption of those standards. And I think Henry will talk a little bit about that in a moment. And we're starting to address processes and operations in ways that we look at dealing with structural inequality, build health and well-being. And we're thinking about how to address environmental negative impacts in ways that also address social impacts. So at Forum at the moment, we're doing a lot of work on climate and health, recognizing that we need to look at environmental and social together. You can't divorce them. And then we're starting to also then think about innovation programs to find net zero outcomes, putting human-centered design and human-centered design, even not divine, at the heart of our approach. So just operations begin to shift when we apply that just and regenerative mindset. And just an example, which is the next slide, please, is from, it's not a small organization, but it's an organization I've worked with for the last few years in the US. And I'm sharing it with you today because they're a mainstream retailer. They're in a highly competitive marketplace, and they sell goods and services to millions of ordinary citizens in the US. And with Target Forward, which is really talking about their operations as a business, they've really shifted how they're doing things. And you'll know all about the issues around George Floyd in the US. That happened in Minneapolis. That's where Target are based. And rather than just go in and just give straight philanthropy, which is useful but not enough, Target has been working in partnership with Black-owned community enterprise groups and actually enabling pathways to market for the goods and services of those groups into Target stores. And so that's a much more long-term solution to the issues that sparked some of that social unrest in Minneapolis, and then obviously waved out to the rest of the US. The next example is on the next slide and shows what happens when you start to think about climate with a just and regenerative mindset. So I've already given the example of pulling forward timescales, which is at the top there, but also it recognizes that to solve climate, we need to link with nature, and that's where nature-based solutions become really powerful. With a just and regenerative mindset, we also find our voice. We advocate for changes in policy, and then we also invest in the ability of our supply chain to really build climate resilience into the supply chain, not just one-off fixes that fail, which is what we can sometimes see, and supporting historically disadvantaged citizens, those communities that have not been heard so much in the past. The example here, which is on the next slide, please, is here in the UK, Brewdog, fabulous example of what started as a small organization moving to carbon negative, but just really embracing climate, really saying we want to make a big difference here. And I think, again, you'll hear much more of a similar story from Henry in a moment. But just goes to show what you can do if you're a small organization with a big ambition and you shift how you do things. The last example is circularity, which is the next slide. again, just trying to shine a light on what happens when you shift your mindset for circularity. Again, there's that advocacy, collaboration with policymakers. There's the design of product to take someone else's waste and put them into the heart of the new product. And this is really important, reframing the waste industry as worthwhile and meaningful, not an industry that's seen as lower value, building capacity and skills to really enable the circular economy to scale, supporting a sharing economy and equitable access to goods and services. The example here, real quick, I know I'm running out of time. Mud Jeans, really small organization when they started, but the whole idea here is rather than buy jeans, you lease them. Wonderful guy called Bert started this off. It's doing really well. But again, it's really important because Bert didn't have access to tons of capital. This was a small operation, but he was determined to make it work, and it did work. Next slide, please. My last word to leave you with is our mindsets are really important, and adopting a just and regenerative mindset really changes how we do things. But what is also important to remember is our future isn't written. So I love this quote from Buckminster Fuller, US architect. We're called to be architects of the future, not the victims of the past. And I would like to leave you at the crossroads that we showed at the beginning, and just leave you with the fact the future isn't written, it's ours to create. So how can we make just and regenerative part of that second pathway and actually create the future that we want? That's what's in front of us at the moment in time. So thank you very much for listening, and sorry about the croaky voice.
Thank you so much, Sally. That was fantastic. And thank you for joining us despite you having COVID. You are amazing and brilliant. Right. So I would now like to pass on to Henry, who is going to talk to us about all that he's up to at Daylesford Organic.
So I'm not sure why I put this picture in. This is me. But Sally, that was brilliant. I love the ending on the future isn't written, it's ours to create. And amazing to do such a speech when you've got COVID. It slightly reminded me of when I had COVID, listening to Chris Whitty saying, next slide, please. So this is me. I grew up on an organic farm in Cumbria. I've worked in sustainability for I guess the past 12 years, and really began to focus more recently on food and farming, which is where so many of our climate impacts arise from, and where so many of the solutions need to be headed. So I work at Daylesford Organic. First and foremost, we're an organic farm. Our founder, Carol Bamford, converted her family farm to organic 47 years ago. So that was in 1975. And this morning I was thinking, that is a long time. Organic now is still not mainstream, but in 1975, 47 years ago, you were really pioneering and probably slightly crazy. This morning on the train, I was thinking what was going on in 1975, and a quick Google said that Margaret Thatcher was the UK's first prime minister. She came in, or first female prime minister. She came in 1975. VHS and Betamax were invented and launched. We were suffering from huge inflation rates caused by OPEC's soaring oil prices and the war in Vietnam. I guess something that sounds slightly familiar and terrifying in the situation that we're currently in as well. And Bohemian Rhapsody were number one and stayed at number one for the next 6 weeks. So that's the kind of context in which what was going on in the UK when we moved to organic in 1975. And since then, we've grown a huge business with, well, not a huge business, a big business for a farm with 6,390 organic certified products, ranging from all sorts of things in this, what I think is a horrendous picture. So anyone who's a farmer knows that lambs do not come out in the snow in the winter, but this is a great example of our marketing team trying to get ahead of the game in April to do our Christmas launch. But it gives you a really good idea of the products that we have. So we've got meat, veg. We produce 20,000 real meals a week. We make 10 organic cheeses on the farm, and we've got a vineyard south of France that makes organic and biodynamic rosé. This is where we're at. So we're a regenerative farm, organic farm based in the Cotswolds. It was very kind of Sally to say that we are kind of in the sustainability 4.0 just and regenerative, but I would disagree, and I think we are doing some amazing stuff when it comes to regenerative farming and work on sustainability and environmental impact. But the bit for me that we really need to tackle is this just transition. And the real challenge for me is, how do you produce really high quality organic produce that doesn't cost the earth, but also doesn't cost the if you've ever been to Daylesford, it's an expensive place. So for me, we've done really well on the regenerative, but there's a lot of work to do on the just and equitable side of it. So yeah, we've got 2,500 acres of organic farmland in the Cotswolds. We run a dairy herd, beef cattle, turkeys, chickens, hens. We've got a market garden of 28 acres, which you can see in this picture, where we grow 300 varieties of organic fruit, vegetables, salad leaves. We also grow 200 varieties of cut flowers. So flowers are a really interesting one for sustainability. They've got a huge environmental impact due to their packaging and fresh transportation from all over the world. So we have a big focus on grown, not flown, organic cut flowers. We've got a wonderful 30-acre agroforestry project, which combines 6,000 hens with 4,000 trees. It produces 1.4 million eggs a year. And for me, it's a really good example of something that kind of ticks all the boxes. So it's productive, it's sustainable, and it's a profitable part of the business. In terms of the sort of more standard sustainability things, we've got 2,000 solar panels across the farm. We've got a huge biomass boiler that brings in wood chip from within 20 miles of the farm, a lot of it from our own farm. We've never given out a single plastic bag. That seems a bit basic now. You wouldn't think, of plastic bags. Certainly people wouldn't do that now, but from the very day that we opened our doors, we've never used or given out a single plastic bag. And over the time that we've been working across the estate, we've planted over 1 million trees. So there's lots, there's loads of things that we're doing, but I think the bit that really makes us unique is the fact that we own the whole story. So I used to work at Nando's, the restaurant group, and there it was all about trying to influence suppliers. Whereas at Daylesford, we own the whole story. So we've got the land, we've got our own abattoir, we've got our own butchery, bakery, creamery, fermentery, charcuterie, patisserie, vineyard. So we are able to look at waste and inefficiencies across the whole business and really bring those back into the system. So we've got a circular system. And the other thing that I think makes us unique is we have been passionate about sustainability from the very day we started. This isn't something we've tried to integrate into the business model later on, but it's very much the founding principles of the business. And a couple of examples, just otherwise it sounds like loads of stats and numbers about how many flowers we grow. But there are a couple of examples that I've been working on this year, which I really like because they're quite tangible. Hold on, see if I can click through. All right, here we are. Here are some South Devon cattle. So we've got our own cattle, and we produce all sorts of meat from our cows, but we've always wasted the hides. We've sold them for £10 to the hide man, and they go off, and we really don't know where they go. So this year, for the first time, we've brought them back into our own supply chain, and we're using a local tannery where tanning leather is a really environmentally damaging process. So we found a tannery that uses vegetable-based tans, so it's chrome-free. So we use vegetables instead of damaging chemicals to produce our own leather. And we're even looking at growing our own vegetables to help with the tanning process on the farm. So you can see in the background here, there's a window seat that uses leather from our own cattle in one of the pubs that we opened this year. And then another project which I really love is our merino. We've got the only flock of organic merino in the UK, and we had a lovely project it was last year, where we brought our merino sheep in last year, and we created one of the first ever merino collections sold in the UK that's never left the island. So the typical supply chain for merino is about 18,000 miles. So merino from Australia and New Zealand going to China, it's often come to Portugal or Italy to be knitted and then sold in the UK. So 18,000 miles. We managed to get ours down to 639. So sheared in the Cotswolds, and then they went up to the Pennines to be scoured and then knitted in the Scottish borders and then sold back down in the Cotswolds. And what's really important for us is it cost us a lot more to do this, but we were helping a really dying industry, particularly in the Scottish borders, where we use really small scale knitters and independent knitters to produce the end products. And we got an award for it, which is always good. And just before I finish up, I wanted to talk about some things we've learned along the way. So we have got so many things wrong in our sort of many years of operation, and there's lots of good things that we've done, but there's that we've really learned a lot. And for me, any advice for businesses sort of maybe at the earlier stage or the smaller stage of their journey is about embedding sustainability before you grow. So creating the structures, the policies, the leadership, and that kind of strong culture of sustainability, or maybe even more what Sally was talking about, the mindset. How do you get that mindset in before you scale? So that is incredibly important, and it enables you to do something which is really important, which is to decouple your business growth with your environmental impact, which we've failed to do. As we grow, our carbon footprint is continuing to increase. So what we're struggling to do is to decouple our economic growth with our environmental impact. But if you get it right at the beginning, what happens is your positive impact grows as your business grows. So that's something that feels really key. And the other bit, which is why I've got this page of stats, is we had our 20-year anniversary for the farm shop here, and we really struggled to talk about our impact because we've never measured anything. We started farming organically, as I said, 47 years ago. Everyone in the business has been, is passionate about sustainability, and they implement sustainability projects because they care about them. But the problem is it's very organic. We've never collected any data. So a huge bit of advice for me would be measure, managing, and reporting from day one. It's really, really boring, but it's absolutely key to telling stories, to celebrating success, but also maybe even more importantly, to know when to stop, when to stop or when to pivot when you're failing and doing things that that maybe aren't having the impact that you hoped that they were. And increasingly, it's really important for legislation and environmental reporting that's coming down the line. And then the final bit for me is really about the team, and Camilla mentioned green champions. For us, this is the key to the success of our business. It's not we've got 2 people in the sustainability team, so it's really not the impact is not being driven by me or by the people in my team. It's driven by our green champions who are out in the business implementing projects, but really important, they're also the ones who are seeing where the opportunities are and where the impacts are. So they're hugely influential. You never underestimate the power that one person can have within a business. But something that I've learned in my time is that sometimes as a green champion, your passion and enthusiasm can sometimes get the better of you. So there's something about, I don't know whether this is a piece of advice or it's just something I was thinking about this morning, is about and I don't want to articulate this in a way that sounds like we're not in serious shit and we need urgent action, but there's something about dreaming bigger but starting smaller, and I think that enables you to have a greater impact. So you need a huge goal that you're going after. You never take your eye off that goal, but you start small, so you gain you need some simple wins. You need something that it might not shift the dial massively, but it builds trust. It gives you political capital. It builds your credibility, and it proves your value to then go after the big thing. So an example for this is probably from Nando's in my previous role, where for me, I was it was all about carbon. We had to dramatically reduce our carbon impact. We got through 58 million chickens a year, and the biggest environmental impact of our business was carbon. So for me, the big goal was net zero 2030, and not scopes 1 and 2, scopes 1, 2 and 3, the whole lot by 2030. But I couldn't go into the boardroom and say, let's go for it. I had to kind of get my political capital first. So the first thing was dream big, but start small. So we started with a move to 100% renewable energy. We found that it was easy to do. There were cost savings, and it really got the business into this idea of carbon reduction. And then I was able to go in and have conversations about net zero by 2030, which Nando's did through the Science Based Target Initiative. They reduced their carbon footprint by 40%. They've got a net zero target of 2030 for the whole scope 1, 2 and 3. And it just felt that this idea of dream bigger but start smaller, without forgetting the urgency, but build your political capital. And for me, that's why the award I'm most excited about today is the sustainability influencer, because it's incredible the power that the green champions, many of whom are people on this call, the power that those individuals can have on influencing change. So that's my kind of closing thought.
I'll just bring myself back into the Zoom, but thank you, Henry. That was fantastic. We'll now go on to our questions and answers. Now, unfortunately, you can't unmute yourselves, I think, most participants, to ask your questions. So if you can put them into the Q&A box, that would be great. Sally, can you start your video? And
yeah, I've done that.
Brilliant, excellent. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I can see now. So we've just had one quick question. I'm sure we've had a question about whether we can share the slides from today. Will you be happy to
of course
share your slides, Sally? Excellent.
Yes, absolutely.
Very good, thank you. Another question: as you have just returned from COP, have you come back optimistic or feeling pessimistic, dare I ask?
I don't know is the honest answer. Cognitive dissonance is high at events like that. The energy to create lasting changes is palpable. There are people there who've spent their lives, like me, committed to this whole agenda and are really serious about trying to create change. And that's great. And then yet the distance is, you've got the site itself was, I mean, it's eye-wateringly big. So you've got maybe 100 or so, they call them pavilions, but basically the blue zone of COP20, any COP, is like a big trade show. And so you've got all these kind of pavilions, and at any one point in time, you've got maybe 40 sessions happening simultaneously. And you're just thinking, is anyone taking any of this in? And it's completely separate from the negotiations. And also each pavilion is $1 million. I mean, Forum for the Future, if we just had 1/10 of that, I could do so much. And so you're just kind of thinking, oh, this is all a bit mad. And then, particularly in Egypt, the activists weren't there. There were some very muted demonstrations, but really very muted. And so the lesser heard voices aren't there, the activists aren't there, a lot of power and a lot of people talking to themselves about the same old things. And I don't know, I think we need to rethink the format of COP and, all the millions and millions that went into making that happen. How might you divert that into addressing some of these root causes? And how do we avoid the same people popping up all of the time saying the same thing? So I don't know. But then I did meet John Kerry, so that was super exciting. He's very tall. So I don't know, Camilla. I don't know. I guess just the final thing to say is, and this is kind of, I suppose, what gives me a little bit of hope. There is an analysis of where we are right now, which is very consistent with a systems perspective, which is, I think we are on the cusp of systemic change, and particularly in the energy system. I think, you know, that transition is nearly, we're nearly about to break through. And at any moment in accelerated systemic change, the activating voices are strong. They were the voices at COP, but then the resisting forces are very, very strong. And the closer you get to shifting a system, the harder it pushes back at you. And I think that's what we're experiencing right now. So that would explain why, you know, some oil and gas majors are really digging in. They're trying to knock the wheels off GFANZ, which is the big global agreement on finance. And it also is very complicated and very messy. So we'll see what happens at the negotiations this week. But I just do worry that there are big swathes of governments around the world, big swathes of businesses not on the call today, that just don't understand the absolute urgency of this issue. And the UN Secretary General is right. But as Henry said as well, never underestimate the power of individuals and the power of those that really want to see change, because it does make a difference. So, yeah, I wish I could say, yeah, it's going to be fine. But I'm not sure I'm not sure that that's true.
I'm sitting in sun like I'm sitting in Egypt. So I'm at COP myself. Here we go. I'm out of the bright sun, Northamptonshire sunshine, and a bit better now. But yes, it is, you know, it is sad that you haven't got an immediate kind of glowing response. I have another question for you, Sally. Could you tell us a bit more about how businesses use the transformation compass? Do they self-assess and then action plan?
Yeah.
How do they change mindset?
So this is one of the nicest things about publishing the transformation compass, is that I now have evidence that people have used it. So you never know when you publish a report. You kind of think, will anyone actually read it? Never mind will they use it. But actually, we know that some organizations, including really big organizations, have used the guidance to effectively road test their existing strategy and find out where there might be opportunities to push it a bit further, and found gaps. So so there's two parts of the guidance. There's sort of vision and then bits on mindset. And then there's something called that critical shift document, which is super detailed and allows you to take issue areas, climate, nature, circularity, and then functional areas, procurement, government relations. And you can use it as a benchmarking tool. And it just allows you to sort of understand where you might push your existing approach even further. So I do know of organizations that have just taken the guidance and done that themselves. When we do it with our partners, we introduce a bit more structure, and those slides I showed you at the end, we've got those for all of the issue areas, all of the functional areas, and you can use a workshop format to then really take what you're doing already. I'd love to move it further, so it could be more, it's not designed as a benchmarking tool, but you can use it in that way. And I think the next iteration, we will make it more of a toolkit. But we know of lots of organizations that have used it to kind of build in ambition into existing strategies, and then to augment existing implementation pathways as a result. Because as soon as you shift that mindset, you do spot how you do things differently. And Henry, I hadn't realized that Nando went for Scope 3 emissions by 2030. I'm going to use that as my example because that's bloody brilliant. But that's that mindset of recognizing the urgency. So yeah, you can use it in workshops. You can just use it. It's written to be used as a benchmarking tool. And we're always super happy to just give some quick advice if anyone's a little bit stuck.
Brilliant. Thank you. I've got, annoyingly, as always with these things, we're running a bit short of time. So I've got one question which we'll direct to Henry. And then I'm afraid we probably will have to wrap up. But there is a lot of discussion on recycled and recyclable plastics being a better long-term solution than packaging in biodegradable alternatives. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it needs to be a quick answer, which is difficult for this one. But basically, with packaging, there are two things that you need to, well, there's two or three things you need to look at. The first one is, do you need it in the first place? And if you do, what is the function it requires? So, for example, at Daylesford, fruit and veg, it doesn't need packaging. Meat, it does. The environmental impact of the meat is so high compared to the packaging, it's completely worth it. So there's that question. And then the two things that there's two other things. And one is the raw material that you use. So what is it made from? And then the final bit is its end of life. What actually happens to it at its end of life? So a lot of the biodegradable packaging might be better from a raw materials perspective, but a lot of the reality is, the UK does not have the infrastructure for dealing with its end of life properly. So what Sally was talking about in her talk about systems, and we don't have the systems and the structure to deal with that type of solution at the moment. So the annoying answer is it is a bit of a case by case thing, but there's for me, there's no point us putting on packaging into the market that sounds more sustainable. That the reality is it won't achieve its end of life, where it's meant to go.
Yeah, some of the I can't remember quite what they're like, the bioplastics, and they don't biodegrade in any. You need a specialist facility, don't you, for them to?
Yeah, and you contaminate. People put them in the recycling, and it contaminates recycling. But also you need to be very careful of the arguments peddled by the plastics industry about the problems there. So there is a chicken and an egg thing of the UK doesn't have the infrastructure, but maybe if we put so much of this product onto the market, it became a problem. The infrastructure might be required to catch up with it.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's given some answers to the questions. I would like to say once again, thank you very much to Henry and Sally for your fascinating talks today. And I'm very sorry that we have to move on, but I am afraid we must. And I would now like to introduce April, who is the General Manager and Principal Consultant of the iiE programme, and she will give a review of the year. Thank you. April, are you able to?
Thank you. Yes. Sorry, I thought I was sharing my screen. Can you see that? Can you not see that?
I can see. You
can see me, but it's not.
Yeah. I can see you. Keep go on to your next slide, maybe.
Can you see my screen? You can see my screen. Okay, lovely. Right, welcome, and thank you, Sally. Thank you, Henry, for these inspiring talks. It's a really hard topic, and we're very much on the front line with investors in the environment, working directly with people within organizations to actually tackle some of these really critical issues that are extremely challenging. And the challenge itself, looking at systems and creating a sustainable business within a system that's unsustainable, as you say, Sally, is not possible. However, we need to start somewhere, and anybody that has any understanding of the issues needs to be really doing their bit. So that's really where we come in, is trying to help people start from a point of success, meet them where they are, help to upskill teams, and actually deliver some results on some key areas. So a little bit more around how we do that in a moment. But over the last year, it's been a really big year. iiE's been going now for 12 years. This year, we launched a new members area where we've got more resources and made it more accessible than ever for businesses to actually track their progress, especially those, having brought on 135 new organizations into this journey, some very much at the beginning of that. And I would say actually most businesses, even when they've been looking at sustainability for a while, we're all still kind of in our infancy in terms of the impact that we can create because of this overall unsustainable economy that we're a part of. However, we've been working lots with organizations more and more, especially as they go up through the accreditation levels, at making some real achievements, not only reducing their own direct impacts, but actually influencing others as well. So we've got a lot of larger organizations now, more than ever before. And the way that we're doing that is through working from a top-down, bottom-up approach, where you've got large businesses that are, enabling and empowering their business units or brands to actually pull up and pick up sustainability initiatives from a grassroots level, and then empowering that grassroots level with the right tools and knowledge to actually deliver results that are place-based, and also help to engage their staff across a variety of different sustainability areas. Part of that we do through also influencing supply chain. We're working with our partner Smart Carbon to help map out and understand and help organizations report on carbon footprint. But importantly, of course, what they do with that number is absolutely integral to progressing climate action. We're also a training center, so we've done lots this year around training. We've delivered more than a dozen different events, from using the iiE framework to target net zero. So for small businesses, that's a really major challenge, is getting that basic understanding of what's needed to happen on an annual basis, let alone a long-term plan. But we've also done lots of events, Q&A events, bringing our members together to actually hash out some of the shared problems and challenges. And because we work with a lot of different sectors as well, there's a lot of transferable learning. So what might be happening or useful within the construction sector or the veterinary sector or healthcare, there's some things, some shared challenges that actually we can learn quite a lot from each other. Not least of which is the feeling that you can get as a green champion, as a person working towards a really hard goal, is that you're not alone, and that there is a way to actually benchmark and measure that progress and celebrate success along the way. And I think that's an absolutely fundamental part to changing business, changing habits, changing mindsets. So what we're doing is we've got a lot of support around cutting carbon. The climate crisis is an absolute driver for change in business. And there's a lot of demands being made on businesses to actually report on carbon, act on carbon. And so what we do is empowering organizations to not only calculate their carbon footprint, but understand what that means, how to tackle some of their carbon hotspots, how to make changes that are direct with that carbon footprint, but also how they can influence. So Henry mentioned a little bit around scope 3. So anybody that might be attending that doesn't know what that means, it's essentially lots of the products and services within your supply chain or within your value chain that are fundamental for how you do business. So how you can influence that can have real ripple effects in terms of influencing that systems change that Sally was talking about. Now, tackling waste. So there's a huge waste crisis as well, not to mention pollution that's included within that, that's not necessarily just disposable products. So getting organizations to understand waste overall, and for some, when they're at the beginning of that journey, it's about thinking about what they're using, how it's being used within the organization, how it leaves. But increasingly getting that understanding as to, changing maybe business models, changing thinking and mindsets so that there could be more of a switch to what we call the circular economy. So moving away from the take, make, and dispose model into something where you might be reducing or eliminating waste, but ultimately moving towards, reuse and redesign of products and services. And in different sectors, that means different things. So one of the things that we do is we empower green champions to do things like waste audits and understand the process, but also taking part in campaigns that raise awareness. So whilst we might be working with a manufacturer that can really influence their process and the products and packaging that they put out in the market, we're also working with a lot of consultancy companies or small companies that are office-based, that a lot of their staff are working from home. So what can they do that can make a contribution? So all of this is really essential as to making it rewarding, making it easy, and making people feel like they're part of that solution. Now, nature often gets overlooked when we're talking about the climate crisis. So what we do is help organizations understand what they can do, whether it's improving the environment outside of their buildings, or if they own land, how they manage that, not just from, looking at reducing or eliminating pesticides or chemicals, but also looking at, if you're in an office and you don't necessarily have outdoor space, what chemicals are you using for your cleaning processes? And ultimately, a lot of that does escape out into the environment. So everybody can do their bit, and there's various things that organizations can do. So another thing that we're also looking at with organizations, particularly as they develop in maturity and sustainability, is thinking about how they can finance solutions for regenerative farming. How can they work with their suppliers if they're in the food industry, agriculture industry, or even the veterinary industry? How can Can they influence farming or agriculture to look at different business models and different ways of doing business, and how will it benefit their bottom line, as well as the resilience and long-term resilience of the organization? Now, people are at the heart of any change, so involving every layer of a business is absolutely foundational. So with our Green Champions, we provide the support and guidance to upskill, whether it's different teams, facilities, or front of house, or those that are involved in manufacturing process, etc. There's a whole range. But how do we empower people? How do we ensure that the organization as a whole is moving forward, but the people that are driving that change are educated, informed, and get that hand-holding that they need to help progress and measure and benchmark that progress as well? So our impact, having brought on loads of new members this year, we're definitely covering the whole of the UK. And what we're really trying to empower is place-based solutions for any organization to undertake. So supporting people directly with making that progress, helping people to introduce or maintain or improve an existing environmental management system. It's really that systems focus to make sure it's not just sitting as a small project within the organization. Even if it starts that way, it's about expanding it out and getting the whole business to really be thinking and doing their bit. We want people to be improving their understanding of carbon emissions. Now this year, our green level members, for example, that are really working hard on target achievement have saved enough electricity to power 1,500 homes. 6 megawatts of power have been saved. There's a lot of work being done around waste and waste reduction. So as I mentioned, some organizations are looking hard at circular economy principles, but we've got some businesses looking at just doing simple swaps, from PPE swaps in healthcare or veterinary to using lots of reusable items, and looking at not only the business case, but actually looking at some of the evidence as to which products they should be choosing and why, and how long will it last, and how do they maintain those products. The support for nature has been something that our Green Champions are really passionate about, and it's definitely something that helps improve the staff engagement levels when people can see why they're doing it, and you value nature and you see the benefits that it can bring to people and society. It helps us to celebrate and to keep going, which is absolutely crucial. So what's next for us? So keeping on, but we've got a lot of amazing new resources in the pipeline. So we're right about to launch our new Green Champion course, which is an e-learning, which will be freely available to iiE members as part of their membership. So it's a way for Green Champions to get their own certification. So whilst they're working to certify their organization, it's a nice incentive to upskill teams and help deliver real foundational knowledge around environmental management and environmental and sustainability principles to individuals. We've also become a certified iiE training center, and we're delivering now 3 different courses to help bring new skill sets to the organizations that we work with. These are the Foundation Certificate in Environmental Management, which is a 5-day course to get to really nitty-gritty around environmental management, its principles and unique tools that will help drive change in business. Our Pathways to Net Zero, which is really focusing on what is needed in terms of developing a decarbonization plan, looking at decarbonizing your supply chain, what you need to be considering in the short term as well as the long term. And then the Environmental Sustainability Skills for the Workforce, which is a 1-day course that will help propel people forward in their careers, especially with the massive green skills gap. Okay, so I'd like to take this moment to move on to introducing the award levels for the iiE accreditation. So whilst today we're recognizing some special winners, I want to highlight that those that have achieved bronze, silver, or green level accreditation have done an amazing achievement. Now, the iiE assessment is annual, so those that can retain this award year on year show real commitment. That is not just a pledge where there might be a little bit of activity around the time the pledge is made. This is consistent and ongoing. And even when it's hard, it's about keep going and picking it up. So our first award is the bronze level. And to achieve bronze, organizations typically will be looking at overall resource use in the business, starting to measure, starting to understand how to measure what matters, developing policies, procedures, empowering people within the organization to make change, undertaking at least one environmental or social project, and then starting to get people engaged and reporting internally at least, although many of these accredited members that you see on the slide now are actually starting to report externally, and it's something that we encourage. So huge congratulations to all 50 or so members that have achieved the Bronze Award this year. It's a fantastic start, and we can't wait to see what you do next as you move towards silver and green. Now, our silver level is about really using data to inform decision making. So as Henry said, data can be absolutely boring and dull, but it's really important so that we can understand, are we focusing on the right things, and how do we know whether or not we've been successful? So this is very much where our silver members sit. It's a development phase as we hope to encourage them to move towards green level. Now, these members are looking at measuring at least 5 different resources that are material to their environmental impact, measuring their scope 1 and 2 carbon emissions, which includes transport, having a travel plan, but not only a plan and a policy, actually showing that they've got some results and are active in this area. So through the audit process, that's really foundational to what we're looking for, is that there's some action happening. It's not just a policy. So huge congratulations to our silver level members, and we'll have a full rundown of all those that have achieved their silver accreditation at the end of today's session. Now, our green level members, these are our top achievers. These are organizations that are really looking holistically about whole business engagement, working really hard on actual target achievement. So these businesses have been measuring 6 or more resources. Some of these are 12 or more resources, depending on what their environmental impacts are and what their goals are. They need to be achieving targets of 2% or more, and where those targets aren't achieved, there has to be good analysis in place that shows there are systems to bring it down and actions to bring it down. So as those of you that have done carbon footprints may know that actually over time your footprint might increase because the business grows. So how do you tackle this? And what we look for within our green level members is there's good accountability and engagement, understanding, and that there's things happening on the ground, active projects that are going to be driving down emissions. These organizations are also reporting externally on their progress and have a significant amount of senior management buy-in. So you can see here some very large organizations and some very tiny small businesses, every one of which has a really crucial part to play in creating a sustainable economy, but also showing that there are businesses that are out there that are leading the way and can inspire others. Massive congratulations for all of our green, silver, and bronze level members. We're really excited to see what you do next. And with that, I'm going to hand back over to Camilla to introduce our special awards. Camilla, are you with us? There we go.
Yeah, sorry, just restarting my presentation. Right, thanks very much, April. And so on to the part where we spotlight those member organisations who've gone above and beyond in 8 special categories. I'd like to start by thanking our panel of experts who gave their time and took the difficult judging decisions. So thank you, Gary Thomas, Sustainability Lead at Ecotricity, Virginia Cinquemani, founder of Green Gorilla Consulting, Bridget Reed, Director of Green Arch Consulting, Stuart Dawkes, the Chief Executive of PECT, and Danielle Hayward, founder of Optimo Business Consulting. Thank you also to all those who have sponsored the awards. So BGL Insurance, Compare the Market, Green Energy Switch, Ecotricity, Sustrans, Roy Thorns, Hunt & Coombs Solicitors, and Cambridge and Counties Bank. We're really, really grateful for your support. Many of the sponsors have joined us online to present their particular awards, so it will be a feat of technical wizardry if the next bit runs smoothly. I'm sure it will. I'd like to start with the award for the best carbon reduction. This is sponsored by Green Energy Switch, and I'd like to invite Director of Operations, Sarah Buttigieg, to announce the winner.
Thank you very much, Camilla. Can you hear me?
We can see you and hear you. Thanks, Sarah.
Fabulous. So yeah, I'm delighted to present this award, one which is certainly close to our hearts at Green Energy Switch. The judges were looking at the entrants' absolute reduction in carbon emissions against previous years relative to other iiE members or averages for their sector, along with significant progress towards halving their carbon emissions since their baseline year and in alignment with national net zero emissions. Key reductions had to be shown in Scope 1 and 2 emissions and in Scope 3 emissions if being measured. Those shortlisted for this category were Gateshead Council and Peterborough College. And the winner is Gateshead Council. So a massive well done to you all. The judges were really impressed by the broad range of projects being undertaken by the council, which are ambitious in their scale and commendable in their carbon reduction. The entry was an excellent example of how simple and novel technologies have been adopted to bring about carbon reductions, from switching streetlights to LEDs and dimming their brightness, to forming a district energy network and developing CHP and solar parks to provide heating and power to council buildings. A new water heating system, which is harvesting warm water from coal mines 150 metres below Gateshead, has just started to provide heat to local customers at a price guaranteed to be at least 5% below market rates. The council has reduced Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 63% in its baseline year of 2007 to 2008, from 47,000 tonnes to 17,000 tonnes a year. Congratulations to all involved, and this is truly amazing. The judges also applauded the work of Peterborough College, who are undertaking an impressive carbon reduction programme across their portfolio of properties by upgrading existing buildings and constructing new builds to BREEAM standards of very good or above. The judges were delighted to read that elements of the building work have remained on show for demonstration and training purposes. The college is training its construction students in low carbon and eco-efficiency technologies and the wider student body in the broader subject of sustainability. This was also commended by the judges. A massive well done to both Gateshead Council and Peterborough College.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, that's brilliant. Now on to our second award. It's for Best Waste Reduction, sponsored by Compare the Market. Nathan Bland, who is Facilities Management Contracts and Support Manager, will reveal the winner. Nathan.
Thanks, Camilla. Well done for those who have been shortlisted today, not only in this award and all the other awards. It is perhaps because waste is so tangible and so evident that investors in the Environment Green Champions usually experience an enthusiastic response from colleagues in relation to waste reduction projects. In this category, the judges were looking for evidence of excellent waste reduction, impactful action on the use or waste of plastics, or innovative examples of reuse and recycling. Entries could have included the use of circular economy principles and/or product lifecycle analysis. So those shortlisted for the award were Andy Thornton, Northampton General Hospital, Northwest Veterinary Specialists, and the University of Northampton. And the winner is Northampton General Hospital NHS Trust. The Trust undertook an excellent project to reduce PPE overuse in the hospital. The award entry demonstrated a well-defined process to shape the project, which involved an initial survey to identify target action areas, followed by the introduction of the trial measures, which most importantly was supported by the clinical lead. Strong education and information campaigns to embed behaviour change, and whilst results continue to be monitored, figures gained over the first 10 weeks led to a forecasted saving of 25,000 kilograms of CO2 emissions and just over £22,000 across the year. The project has received recognition from NHS England, and learning from it will be shared with other organisations in the sector. The judges were particularly pleased to read that despite the pressures currently being experienced by the NHS, such initiatives are given time and resources. Also of note was a submission from furniture supplier to the catering trade, Andy Thornton. The judges appreciated the level of detail provided relating to how the different waste streams were being reused or recycled, and were pleased to read that the company's cardboard recycling was generating an income stream for a local good cause. The judges noted that development of circular systems would offer huge opportunities for the refurbishment and resale of furniture.
Excellent. Thank you, Nathan. That was brilliant. Really inspiring projects there that we heard, or initiatives that we heard about. The next award is that of Sustainable Transport Champion. Matt Baker from Sustrans was unable to join us today, but I'm delighted to introduce Joe Holmes, who runs iiE in the northeast of England, to announce the winner on his behalf. So, Joe, can I hand over to you?
Thank you, Camilla, and I'm still buzzing about Gateshead there. That's brilliant. Well done. Entries were evaluated against the sustainable transport actions taken or investments made or innovations introduced and how they measured this. Those shortlisted for the award were Budget Paper Supplies, University of Northampton, and Compare the Market. And the winner is Compare the Market. Well done. The judges were impressed by the initiatives to encourage behaviour change, such as the installation of secure bike storage and staff showers, the organisation of bike servicing and repair pop-ups, and the introduction of the Bike to Work Salary Sacrifice Scheme. Compare the Market has also introduced benefits for those who car share, such as dedicated parking spaces, started an EV purchase programme and installed charging points at work. The opportunities for experience and knowledge sharing amongst employees who were taking up greener travel options on the internal Slack channel were also judged to provide an easy way to create a culture within which using alternatives to the car was encouraged. The judges commented that the University of Northampton also received praise for the breadth of the initiatives to discourage single car occupancy journeys through greater detail on, greater detail on how uptake was being measured would have enhanced the entry. Budget Paper Supplies were also commended for considering staff's well-being and health, as well as environmental impact, when introducing the Bike to Work scheme, and for adjusting employees' working hours to fit the local bus timetables to allow staff to use public transport to reach the company's remote location.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joe. We now go on to the Natural Environment Champion. This has been sponsored by Cambridge and Counties Bank, and Andy Tovey, who is Head of Credit Risk Monitoring and Control and a member of the Green team at the bank, is joining us to announce the winner.
Thank you, Camilla. Yeah, this award recognises how an organisation has contributed to enhancing or protecting the natural environment, including support for biodiversity and conservation. In this category, the judges were looking for evidence of action or projects undertaken and how the impact of this was measured, who participated, such as employees and partners, and how often the activity took place. And the shortlist was Oakley, Westover and ITT Networks. The award has a number of very strong entries, and those shortlisted were those three on the screen. And I'm pleased to announce that the winners are...
We're on that slide now.
Westover Vets and Oakley Trust are joint winners, but for very different inspirational reasons. Congratulations. Firstly, Westover Vets have engaged with external experts, including the Woodland Trust and the Farmland and Wildlife Advisory Group, to turn their 14 hectares of land, which was previously used as algal production, into a haven for biodiversity. Some of the land has been planted with a nectar-rich wildflower mix designed to support pollinators, and another section has been planted with a birdseed mix to feed overwintering birds. 2.5 hectares of permanent pasture remain. In addition, 2 new ponds have been dug, 750 metres of native hedging and 1,600 native deciduous trees have been planted, many by staff during social events. The Westover team will measure the impact of their work through soil sample analysis to evaluate improvement in carbon sequestration and have already started monitoring biodiversity. They're keeping a log of any wild visitors spotted by the staff, whilst taking quick breaks from their daily duties. So congratulations. Secondly, Oakley Trust have undertaken a number of learning projects with a diverse range of groups across the north of England. The judges were impressed with their reach of their work, which involved teaching and encouraging environmental consideration and biodiversity enhancements in their learners' communities. Activities included running workshops about what individuals or groups can do to tackle climate change, testing water quality of the local river, and understanding the importance of protecting clean water sites, building a greenhouse using recycled plastic, helping groups to develop allotments, and finally working with students from a local special education needs school to transform a bare field into a meadow of wildflowers edged with willow whips, which reduce the risk of flooding in the longer term. Congratulations to you both.
Thanks, Andy. Great projects there from Oakley and Westover. So congratulations to them, as Andy says. Now on to our new award for 2022, that of Best Newcomer. This was sponsored by Hunt & Coombs Solicitors, and I'd now like to introduce one of the partners, Paddy Appleton, to present the award.
Thank you, Camilla. It's a very great pleasure to be able to present the Best Newcomer Award today. This new category provides an opportunity to applaud those who have achieved excellence in their first year of the iiE programme. The award received 11 entries, which gives an indication of the progress made by many since sign-up. Judges were looking for examples of improvements made as a result of being part of the programme, such as the introduction of sustainability-related policies, initiatives, training and/or communication campaigns, which have led to impact reductions and/or increased staff engagement or investment made in resource efficiency with proven results. The 11 entries were shortlisted to 4, being Atkin Jones, Cromwell Tools, Oundle School and Ash Tree Vets. And I'm delighted to announce that the winner is Cromwell Tools. Congratulations. The judges felt that Cromwell Tools had introduced a range of ambitious steps which had required significant levels of commitment and investment and had been put in place in a relatively short space of time. Efficiency measures included the trial and introduction of green vehicles to their company, including vans, the reduction of fleet mileage through optimized route planning, the requirement that new site buildings have A-rated energy performance certificates, the minimization of packaging waste, which included the introduction of backhauling, the streamlining of paper publications, and the introduction of a sustainability rating for their catalogued products. Also receiving commendations are Atkin Jones, who the judges felt had allocated both money and time to improving their environmental performance, from investing in professional development to supporting local causes through volunteering and charitable donations, from engaging stakeholders in a purpose mapping exercise to signing up to environmental campaigns within the travel industry. This small company had sought a number of ways to reduce their impact. And also receiving a commendation is Oundle School. The judges recognised the complex nature of the school, commended the team for the progress made to date, and encouraged them to be ambitious in their action planning for the future. Congratulations to you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Paddy. So I gave you a bit of a tongue twister there to get through. You did that brilliantly. And we now move on to the award for Sustainability Influencer, sponsored by BGL Insurance. Unfortunately, our BGL representative has had to drop out at short notice, so I'd like to introduce Jan Maskell, who leads the iiE programme in the Northwest, to announce the winner.
Thank you, Camilla, and thank you to Henry for the reference to this award earlier on, because I think it is really important to recognise the impact of different organisations, both internally and externally, as sustainability influencers. So for this award, the judges were looking for how an individual or a business influenced colleagues and or inspired change within other organisations through projects to adapt a process or practice or successful environmental campaigns. So those entries that shortlisted were Vets for Pets, Milton Keynes, Vet Partners, the British Veterinary Association, and Scientists for Global Responsibility. And I'm pleased to announce that the winner is the British Veterinary Association. So the judges commended the wealth of resources and communications used to spread the sustainability message to their 19,000 members. Encouraged by this year's president selecting sustainability as their chosen annual theme, BVA have used a variety of ways to capture the attention of as many of their members as possible. These have ranged from weekly and monthly member emails, hosting the Greener Veterinary Practice webinar series, having stands and discussions at London Vet Show and BVA live events, updating and adding fantastic sustainability related content to their CPD section of their website, and posting numerous blogs around sustainability. Also very noteworthy and receiving commendations were Vets for Pets Milton Keynes, where the judges noted that their entry provided what could be done at local level. They demonstrated good outreach work and used innovative approaches to spreading their message. They'd also been happy to share their failures as well as their successes, which keeps their story realistic and lends encouragement to others. So congratulations and well done to the shortlisted organisations.
Well done, BVA. It was a difficult category to judge as each of those shortlisted were doing such different but impactful work. That leaves us with two final awards, those for the overall outstanding achievers, split by size into two categories. Firstly, we'll find out who was judged to be the overall outstanding achiever SME, an award sponsored by Roythorn Solicitors. The winner will be announced by Operations and Support Manager and Green Team member, Cara Davey.
Thank you, Camilla. The overall Outstanding Achiever Awards bring recognition to the accredited iiE members that are significantly reducing their resource use and carbon footprint, demonstrating excellent staff engagement and meaningful social impact. Those shortlisted for this award were Leeds Environmental Design Associates, known as LEADER, Old Hall Vets, iiE Referrals, Rocket Mill, and JCS Fish. And the winner is iiE Referrals. Well done. The judges noted the commendable range of activities taking place at the veterinary hospital and the strength of commitment demonstrated by Green Champion, Maren Jr., who, through her enthusiasm and dedication, had inspired action amongst colleagues, not only in work, but at home as well. The hospital reduced their carbon footprint by 15% over the year, despite including additional measurement data in the second year. This reduction was primarily achieved by reducing electricity use by 40% and isoflurane gas use by 15%, which was particularly impressive as staff numbers increased over the period. Waste has been another area of focus, with reusable surgical drapes now being used in the place of disposables. Reusable surgical masks are one of the next targeted areas. The hospital also delivered several impactful projects, including bee-friendly planting in the grounds, a pet memorial tree planting programme, donations of computer equipment to Computer Aid, and fundraising events for a number of charities. The entry from LEADER was also highly commended by the judges, who wanted to give mention to the significant carbon reductions achieved over time, the excellent internal comms, and great range of initiatives. LEADER are an excellent example of a regenerative business. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Cara. Brilliant. And finally, our overall outstanding achiever large, sponsored by Ecotricity. I'd like to invite Gary Thomas, Ecotricity's sustainability lead, to announce the winner.
Thanks, Camilla. It's fab to be invited along to present this final award today because I was lucky enough to be part of that judging panel. So I know that this has been worth the wait. But before I announce it, I'd just like to congratulate all of those who entered the awards. You know, it was clear how much good work that is being done across all of the membership to embed sustainability into the heart of your organisations. So from all of us at Ecotricity and the planet, thank you for all of the things that you're doing. So for this final award, the shortlisted entries were Cambridge in Counties Bank, Durham County Council, Hull City Council, Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust, and the winner is Durham County Council. So the panel were really impressed to see that, having declared a climate emergency, the council had taken significant steps to reduce their carbon footprint, and that things like biodiversity and ecological improvement targets had also been set. The council's developed its own carbon tracking system, and it started a considerable decarbonisation programme across their portfolio of buildings and schools, with one school that's already been described as being carbon neutral. So their climate emergency agenda has been adopted across all departments, and representatives of which must now report into the council's own net zero carbon board. All staff have undertaken mandatory climate training, and that's also been embedded into the new staff inductions. Now, the council has an ambitious tree planting programme and have extended their climate targets to include both biodiversity and ecological improvements. Normalised resource use reductions of between 5 and 30% were achieved across the whole of the year, and the council's carbon footprint was reduced by 11%. Hull City Council was a close runner-up, and the judges were impressed by the reductions achieved in their Scope 1 and 2 emissions, and also the excellent work that's being done through the OES Net Zero programme to reduce their Scope 3 emissions. So congratulations to all.
Thank you so much. What you miss when you're having an online event like this is the huge applause that should go to all of those who were shortlisted, and particularly to the winners. So a virtual applause to all of you. We always aim to write up case studies about the good practice, which you've just heard about today, which will go onto our website. But if you'd like to know more about any of them in particular, then please do get in touch with us through the info@ email address, which you can find on our website. I'd like to give a quick mention to our next 2 webinars described on this slide. More details can be found on the events page of our website, along with the details of the iiE training courses, which were mentioned by April. So it just remains for me to congratulate our winners and to thank our speakers, our judges, our sponsors, the Green Champions, and all of you for listening in. And we hope to see you in person next year. So until then, keep up the good work, and thank you.